for joining us for our program, Obento, Japanese Culture in a Box. My name is Helen Liu, and I'm the Programming and Partnerships Manager at Carey Library. Before we begin, I want to take a moment to thank the Carey Library Foundation. Their support enables us to bring programs like today's event to you. Now I'd like to introduce our guest. Debra Samuels is a Lexington resident, Japanese cuisine expert and cookbook author. She was the recipient of the Japan Society of Boston's 2020 John E. Thayer III Award for outstanding contributions to the progress of the understanding and friendship between the people of the United States and Japan. She leads the program content and curriculum development of Table for Two, USA's Japanese-inspired food education program. Wa-Shokuiku Learn, Cook, Eat Japanese. She was a food writer and contributor to the food section of the Boston Globe and has authored two cookbooks, My Japanese Table and The Korean Table, both available to borrow at Carey Library. Samuels created the exhibit Obento and Built Space, Japanese Boxed Lunch and Architecture at the Boston Architectural College in 2015 and co-curated Objects of Use and Beauty, Design and Craft in Japanese Culinary Tools at the Fuller Craft Museum in 2018. Many of the objects for both exhibits were from Debra's extensive personal collection. Debra worked as a program coordinator in the Japan department and an exhibition developer at the Children's Museum in Boston from 1992 to 2000. She has lived in Japan altogether for 12 years and specializes in Japanese cuisine. She travels around the country and abroad teaching hands-on workshops on Obento, the Japanese lunchbox. During COVID, she taught live online cooking programs to youth and adults. Welcome, Debra. I'm so excited to get started.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Carey Library and Helen, for having me. I'm so touched that I would be asked to participate in this and share my love of Japanese cuisine and my super crazy love for bento boxes and the bento lunch, and hopefully cook along with you or just tell you about how I got into this and do a demonstration. So I will tell you what we're going to be doing. I'm going to present about a 15 to 20-minute PowerPoint presentation, but don't worry, it's got a lot of pictures, all of food. And we'll talk a little bit about how I got to where I am today and about Japanese cuisine, and then ultimately about Japanese bento. And then we're actually going to put a bento together. And I am then going to show you some of my 80-box collection of bento boxes and explain a little bit about the differences in them, who uses them, and how you fill them. And I think you'll find it all very interesting. I'm not sure, what did I do with it? Here it is. If anybody is old enough to remember this was my lunchbox, not actually my lunchbox. I found it at an antique place, but this was the lunchbox I carried to school. Maybe some of you remember this. And so we're going to talk a little bit about the differences between the American lunch box and a Japanese lunchbox, and the thought processes that goes into putting it together. And so without further ado, I'm going to share my screen. So my presentation is Obento, Japanese Culture in a Box. And I'll start by saying a lot of times we hear the word bento and then you hear Obento. O is just the honorific for the word. And you put that in front of a lot of different words. It sort of elevates things a little bit. So that is the formal term is Obento. And the term we're all using today is bento, Japanese culture in a box. So in Japanese, that says mukashi mukashi, sono mukashi, which means a long, long time ago. I was 20 years old in 1972, and I took my first trip to Japan. I'll tell you a little bit more about that as I just fast forward. I went from blonde to gray in Japan over 50 years. It's very hard for me to get that number out. Living in Japan, going back and forth over a period of 50. We go for a year and I'll explain how that happened and how that all got started. So that is me in the kimono at our first homestay family in Japan on the island of Kyushu, a southern island of Kyushu, in a very small little village called Tsukumi. So sometimes there's one person in your life that changes your life. Well, here I have two people. That's me, obviously, on the left with long blonde hair. That is my husband, Dick, who was my high school sweetheart. We grew up on Long Island in New York, and Dick was a year ahead of me, went off to Colgate University, and I went off to Lesley College. It was Lesley College at the time, now it's Lesley University. And he saw a poster, "Let's go to Japan." And it was for the first study abroad program at Colgate University going to Japan. And he wanted to go, but we didn't want to be separated. And our parents let us get married at age 20 in college. We just celebrated our 50th wedding anniversary. Dick is a professor at MIT in Japanese politics, and I work with Japanese cuisine. I teach it. I've been a caterer with it, and this trip changed our life. This gentleman over here is Dr. Chikanori Oishi. He was our homestay father in Japan. So this was 1972, just short of a generation after World War II. It was a revelation for all of us, but he embraced us, brought us into his home. Two Jewish kids from Long Island. We had never been out of the country before, and here we are in Japan. And so in order to go to Japan, we had to study Japanese ahead of time, and for 1 year. And then when we got there, we studied for an intensive month, and then they sent us out into Japanese families, and onward we went for 6 months in Japan. So that is the creation story. And from there, the next time we went back to Japan, I had a 5-month-old baby. If you can see this little blonde boy over here, he was 5 months old when we left the country. Well, I was 25, I think. First time mom. I thought I spoke Japanese until I got there and tried to live. But we lived in a very deeply downtown area, right near the Tsukiji fish market, and nobody spoke English, and there were no foreigners. And these people adopted us. They became our family. And if it wasn't for them, I would never, ever have survived. I learned how to feed my son his first foods, which in the US was applesauce, and in Japan was tiny little white bait fish. My mother was utterly horrified by this. She pretty much cried the whole time. I was away and didn't know how I was going to make it. I wasn't quite sure how I was going to make it either, but when you're 25, you're a little arrogant, and you just do. You just do it. So the first time we went to Japan, my son was 5 months old. We stayed there until he was almost 3. Here you can see me feeding him with chopsticks. When I told my mother we were going to go to Japan and she knew I was pregnant, she started to cry and said, "What is he going to eat?" And it's just, this is 77, where tofu was hippie food. And anyway, the learning curve was up. She came and visited us in Japan, never liked Japanese food, but loved the people. So there we are. Second time we went back, my husband was writing his dissertation. Oh, the first time it was his dissertation. The second time was his first book. Went back with 2 children, 3 and 6. Now they're 45 and 42. And they both spoke Japanese fluently. My son Brad went to a Japanese elementary school. The little guy learned enough Japanese to get on a Japanese TV kids program. It was really quite fun. And then when I was, when you're in another country, you just don't absorb culture, but you're sharing your own. So we did birthdays, parties, Halloween, Thanksgiving, all sorts of things. And it was a wonderful experience. I learned Japanese cooking formally in a Japanese cooking class. My language got good enough for me to be in a class with all Japanese. And I knew that the recipes were not going to be watered down for a gaijin, a foreigner. My language hearing was good, but I couldn't read, and my friends read the recipes to me. And then, as you all know, sometimes the best places to learn are in the kitchens of your friends and family. And these two women are my Japanese sisters. They are the daughter and daughter-in-law of the first gentleman that you saw. And in the States, I taught Japanese cooking to anybody who wanted to learn. And I taught American cooking to Japanese who were here for 2 or 3 years while their husbands were working at the university or a hospital or a business. And when I was in Japan, the American embassy would send me out to do American cooking in all sorts of different parts of Japan. And it was a wonderful opportunity to do that. So I got to see a lot and communicate with a lot of people that I normally might not have been around. Fast forward, I got an opportunity to write for the Boston Globe. Somebody had, I don't even remember how it happened, but I met someone and they were starting a section in the Globe. And my first article I wrote was on Obento, which was how I fed my son his first meal in Japan. And I was off and running for about 17 years and worked on a lot of different kinds of different cultures. We get to travel a lot because my husband is an academic. And so food is a common language, and it was just a fantastic experience. And then I never intended to write a cookbook, but an editor from Tuttle Publishing Company, which published a lot of Asian books, saw my articles in the Globe and thought I would be a good fit for them. And so this actually is my second cookbook. This is my Japanese table. The first book was the Korean table that I wrote with a Korean friend, and I'll tell you a little bit about that afterwards. So that's just a little bit about how I got to where I am today, the short version. And now we'll just talk about what is Japanese cuisine, what are the elements, what you think of it, and then slide into bento. So what do you think of when you think of Japanese cuisine? A lot of times people have a very, an image of very refined cuisine with beautifully laid out plates, tiny little portions of delectable bites, and just all very kind of a little bit unapproachable. So this is not typical Japanese cuisine. This is more like a kaiseki ryori, or a sort of a high-end type of gourmet cuisine. And believe me, if you ate this for dinner, you would be hungry afterwards. I know that. But it's a lot of beautiful little foods. The Japanese have a saying, meide taberu, you eat with your eyes. And it is absolutely, absolutely true. So this is one image of Japanese cuisine, but this is also Japanese cuisine. I don't know if anybody can identify this wonderful activity that's going on up here. It's my upper left. It's the cherry blossoms. That is an annual event. It lasts for about 2 weeks. People follow the sakura, the cherry blossom, as they open, and they sit under the cherry blossoms and eat and have wonderful meals and get completely drunk on sake, have a blast, very rousing, lots of fun things to do. And so people enjoy food outdoors as well, and in not fancy places. This here in the upper right-hand corner, the hot pot dish. This is called oden. These are fish paste balls. Maybe you've seen them at H Mart. I know Korean culture has them. I don't know if Chinese food has these kinds of fluffy fish balls, but you can also see something that does not look Japanese at all. That's a little sausage. That's a Vienna sausage. How did that get to Japan? With the American soldiers, like a lot of other things, like Spam, spaghetti sauce, ketchup, all of these things. And then what very often happens is the host culture absorbs it some way and makes it into their own new food. So this very ugly, delicious hot pot is quite yummy and very Japanese. Anybody want to venture a guess to what this is down here? This is a pork cutlet, a deep fried pork cutlet. That is not originally Japanese. Deep fried foods came with the Portuguese, and frying meat came with the Portuguese back in the 1600s when they were allowed in for a very brief time in a very small area. And it is really quite delicious, and it is very Japanese. If you can see here, it's served with a bowl of miso soup, rice, and a huge mound of cabbage, and it is a fabulous dish. These are Japanese soul foods, comfort foods. Anybody know what this is? It's in a special category of cuisine called Wa-Shokuiku, kind of a Western Japanese style cuisine. This is omu rice, omelet rice. Underneath this egg is a big pile of delicious rice that's sauteed with chicken or stir-fried with chicken, really quite delicious. Anybody know what that is? Yes, curry rice. I would like you to know that curry rice is the most #1 popular home style food that is made in Japan. Where did the curry come from? Not through the Indians. It came through the British when they came in. Where did they get it? From India, from Indians. And so they brought this curry with them. It's really quite delicious. It's very sweet, and it is sort of recognizable as curry to perhaps an Indian, but it is Japanese style curry. And here we have Neapolitan spaghetti. What is in there? Spaghetti, ketchup, and hot dogs. Again, one of the most popular foods, home style soul foods that you can have. These two dishes very often made by dads. When you need to put everything in a pot. But I'm showing you these to illustrate, and as we know very well here in America, that people come, migrants come, immigrants come, they bring with them their culture and their food, and it gets adapted. And Japan is no different. So here we are at some Japanese street food, and at different fairs and matsuris throughout the year. Absolutely fantastic food. To tell you the truth, I don't go to high-end restaurants. These are the places that I tend to haunt. This is okonomiyaki, which is a savory pancake. This is octopus right here, and octopus fritters here, and like a pancake filled with Japanese sweet bean paste. And then this is roasted ayu, which is a river trout. Finally, something we recognize, guys. This is sushi, nigiri sushi to be specific. And this is the kind of sushi that Japanese eat outside of the house. This is not something people generally make at home, although some dads do, some people do, because it's really quite an acquired skill. But this is mostly eaten out. You actually can have this delivered to your house on a beautiful lacquered tray by somebody riding a bicycle or a motorcycle. But this is the kind of sushi that people eat outside. They do make sushi at home, but they make hand-rolled sushi. This is sushi in the house. So this is called a te maki sushi. Te is hand, and maki is to roll. and you put all sorts of fabulous things on a platter. It doesn't have to even be Japanese. Asparagus, smoked salmon, raw maguro tuna, shrimp, avocado, anything. You have this giant feast where there's a bowl of rice, sushi rice, and I'll tell you about that in a second, and nori, which is seaweed, and people make their own hand rolls as they go. And this is the kind of sushi that you eat at home. And when I'm making a Japanese dinner for people or a sushi party, this is what I serve. And just to let you know, sushi rice, we call the Japanese short or medium grain rice sushi rice here, but it is not really sushi rice. It only is called that because you can make sushi with it. Sushi rice has a dressing of rice vinegar, sugar, and salt. And that's what is put on the hot rice that then forms it helps to be a preservative for the fish and the different things that are on top of it. Okay. Ramen is the new sushi. There's a ramen shop everywhere you go now. Ramen's being crowded out already. But it is from China, and it came to Japan with Chinese immigrants that went, I think, sort of maybe late 1800s, early 1900s as workers. You bring your food with you. And so the Japanese have adopted and adapted it. And I'm sure it drives some people crazy, but it is definitely seen as a Japanese food now, usually with wavy style noodles, broth, and all different kinds of ramen. And we have many, many restaurants there. And one of the most delicious ramen restaurants I found was here in Brookline. It's called Brooklyn Ramen. Talk about mishmashing cultures together, but they make some great ramen, and they are at Maruichi, I think, in the Japanese store in Brookline, and we have one up here in Arlington. Oops. Okay. So now let's talk about some of the qualities of Japanese food. Generally, when you sit down to eat, you have a variety of different types of foods in smaller portions. This happens to be a box full of very beautiful food for an outdoor picnic. But it kind of shows you about the variety of cuisine. You're not generally sitting down to a Japanese style meal, although you did see that in the tonkatsu, to one big, large 8-ounce steak, a carbohydrate, and a veg. That's generally not how it works. It's a variety of food. Japanese prize seasonality tremendously and like to eat foods from the season, fiddlehead ferns in the spring. Even though you can get everything all year round, seasonality is a very important part of Japanese food culture. Presentation. You know how we say here in the US for real estate, location, location, location. Well, here in Japan, it's presentation, presentation, presentation. And it doesn't matter if it's for a 5-year-old or a 50-year-old, the same concept exists, that you would like to delight the receiver of the food. Meide taberu, you eat with your eyes. And so presentation is just about as important as the way something tastes. Quality. I think a lot of people associate high quality with Japanese cuisine, and that's whether you're getting a very expensive sushi, or if you're going to a 7-Eleven convenience store. Don't think 7-Eleven food here, because it just doesn't compare. The Japanese 7-Eleven, you could have a feast there. The food is generally delicious. And I kind of feel like if you're giving that quality of food at a 7-Eleven, the population has high standards, very high standards for food. And that's how they can charge as much money as they do. But whether it's a farmer growing oranges or the purveyors of fish cutting up a fabulous tuna, which is very often from the water off the shore of Boston. I went to Japan and had sushi from Boston. So it was so interesting. Quality is a very, very important element. And now I'd like to tell you a little bit about and get to the portion thing, a concept called Ichiju Sansai. This is the way traditionally Japanese think of putting together a meal. And this also speaks to portion size. And as you can see here, what I said, there's a variety of food in smaller portions on different platters. This is very typically Japanese. And ichiju means one soup and 3 side dishes with rice. And this could be a breakfast on the right-hand side here. That is very possibly a breakfast. It could be a lunch or it could be a dinner. People will eat soup and have rice for breakfast. But this is the embodiment, I think, of Japanese philosophy about eating. And there is usually pickled vegetables, as in many cultures, good for your digestion. The main dish, look at this. Look at the size. It's kind of equal. You don't have your main dish as like twice as much as other things. So this concept of portion sizes, this is where it comes out in the most, the characteristic of ways. And you'll also see the chopstick setting here. All the Asian cultures have different chopsticks. The Chinese chopsticks are long, the Korean chopsticks are long and made of metal, and the Japanese ones are shorter and very often made of wood. When you set a place, the chopsticks are always pointing to the left and the handles to the right. Does anybody want to guess why that is the case? Always. This is the proper setting for the table. Any ideas?
You're all right-handed.
You're right, exactly.
No left hand allowed.
No, it used to be no left-handed allowed, and that would get banged out of them also because the writing is from right to left. And if you try to take your hand and go like this, and you're using ink, it smears. But I just sat with 2 Japanese women who are left-handed the other day. So they try to change it, but it doesn't always work. But that is one of the reasons. And that also embodies the concept of okyakusama, or the guest. The Japanese are always thinking of the guest. Omotenashi, which is this feeling of hosting, of wanting to make the guest feel comfortable, is a very Japanese concept. Okay, that also brings us down to the concept of balance. There are 5 colors, and I know this is true in other Asian cultures, Korean and Japanese and Chinese. This concept actually came from China. These are 5 colors that you put together to get a balanced meal: red, yellow, black, green, and white. It's not like our pyramid where, you know, white is carbohydrates or something like that. It's not like that. Different foods are represented, proteins, carbs, in different color categories. But the number one thing that a parent, mostly the mom, thinks about when she's making bento for her child is color. And it's these 5 colors. This cloth was designed by a Japanese graphic designer for his son, who is going to be living by himself for the first time at age 21. The first time he's going to cook for himself. So the dad made this, said, if you put your plate down on this and find 5 foods of these colors, you're going to have a balanced meal. And so I was quite taken by that concept. And you see this reflected in other cultures as well. So flavor profile, what makes something Italian, what makes something Korean, what makes something Japanese? It's definitely a bit of an overstatement, but the seasonings you very often see are sugar, salt, vinegar is rice vinegar, soy sauce, and bean paste or soybeans, miso. Sa, shi, su, seso. Sato is sugar, shio is salt, su is vinegar, seiyo is the old word for soy sauce, and miso. These are 5 condiments or 5 flavors that you see very often repeated in Japanese cuisine. There are, of course, so many more, but these are elements that you almost find in most dishes. Umami, that is a term that has now lasted through Western culture. Umami is the savory fifth taste that is very hard to describe, but it was discovered by a Japanese scientist who was studying about seaweeds, and it was discovered in kombu. And that is, they found glutamic acids there. Anybody want to guess what this is? Ajinomoto?
MSG.
MSG. Americans freak out when we hear MSG, but it is not that way in other cultures. People talk about Chinese food syndromes and all of these things that are, not proven. But it used to be accent. When I was a kid, people would be pouring accent on top of things. And if you taste it, it's like sour, salty. But it's a naturally occurring thing that you find in Parmesan cheese and beef and mushrooms. But this scientist found a way to extract it out of kombu, which is a type of Japanese seaweed, and Ajinomoto was born, monosodium glutamate. This was one of the first slides I did when I started doing this program to prove that Japanese food was part of the American, culinary scene now. You could buy sushi in most supermarkets, tofu, edamame, sake, teriyaki, wasabi, panko. And the reason why I chose this is because these foods do not need translation anymore. Everybody knows what they are. And so you're sort of on your way to having these things become part of the American culinary landscape. Then we fast forward a little bit. And now what do we have in supermarkets? Mochi, ice cream, miso, kombu in their own Japanese words, shiitake mushrooms, tofu shirataki noodles. Wow, that's another whole level of accepting new foods and people knowing what they are. And then we go to ramen. And this is not H-Mart, pals. This is Stop and Shop. I was somewhere. Look at the size of this amount of ramen noodles. It's almost as long as the cereal aisle. So, not necessarily good for you. There's God knows how many thousands of milligrams of sodium in each one of these bowls, but it is part of the American supermarket landscape. And now, whoops, let me go to the next one. The New York Times crossword puzzle. Anybody out there do crossword puzzles? We're used to seeing words, like simple words like soy, but here we are, nori and sake, seaweed and rice wine, using the Japanese word nori, which is assumption that people know what it is when you see the clue. This one is tonkatsu, which is the pork cutlet. And here, a really unusual one is furikake, rice sprinkles. So when you're hitting the New York Times and using these Japanese words, to me, Japanese food has sort of become part of the, our language here, and people know what these things are. And I will show you furikake afterwards if you don't know it. So now, finally, to Japanese culture in a box, the bento. Can somebody tell me what they think when they look at this box? Anything that comes to mind?
Colorful.
Colorful, yes, colorful. What did you say, Joan?
And yum.
Yum, yes, Mayday taberu, eat with your eyes, exactly. This is a very good example of that. So you can see that it's a variety of food. in a small space, small portions, beautifully presented and colorful. So obento is a Japanese meal that's designed to fit in a box. It's pretty portable. I think it can be consumed at home, or in an office, or in a restaurant. Most people know this as shokudo bento over here, which is what you very often see in Japanese restaurants. The thing about obento, and the things that I didn't know whether it would translate for Americans, is that the food is very often eaten at room temperature. And so when we want to eat shrimp tempura, we want to eat hot shrimp tempura, but the Japanese will eat cold shrimp tempura in the box. And as you can see, again, small portions. This is a New Year's feast over here, again, highlighting small portions. Obento comes from the Chinese word of convenience. It's got onigiri, or the rice balls, have a long history. These were rice cakes that were portable meals for workers in the field, for warriors on the battlefield. Began with outdoor elaborate picnics by the upper classes. And as time went on, it morphed into what we know it is today. Bento bako, bako means box. And there are all kinds of boxes for all kinds of people, for all kinds of occasions. And I have most of them. So this over here is called magewapa. It is a wooden box. It is made by actually bending the wood and softening it in water. This is one of my favorite ones. This over here is my son's first bento box when he went to school in Japan in first grade 40 years ago. And I'll show you, this is also a box like for a lady, an office worker. And this is a furoshiki, which is a wrap, the way people wrap their boxes and take them with them. Okay. Bento in America. I'm sure many of you out there have children, grandchildren that are taking bento boxes to school. We have co-opted the concept, which is just great, by creating boxes with little compartments where things will fit in exactly right there and will not fall out. But a bento can be any box at all, just as long as you sort of portion it out. Books galore in English on bento and the concept and recipes. Bento does not have to be Japanese food at all, but Japan is a rice-eating culture, and so most of the food, a large portion of the real estate in a bento box is rice in some form. So I will just tell you, this is the last part of the presentation, how I got into making bento. We went back to Japan in 1983. My older son, Brad, was 6. He was in Japan for the first 3 years of his life. He stopped speaking Japanese when he came back at 3, but we thought, okay, we're going to put him in a Japanese first grade and he'll get his language back, which he did. But I sent him to school on his first day with a very typical American lunch, a bologna sandwich, carrot sticks, cherry tomatoes, grapes, and 2 Oreo cookies in a paper bag. Well, he came home crying that his lunch was not cute. And I said, okay, I'm going to send you to school with a cute lunch. So the next day, he got a cute bag from McDonald's, from McDonald's, and I put in his sandwiches and his cherry tomatoes and everything. And he came home the next day and said, crying again, his lunch was not cute enough. So one of our neighbors took me by the hand and took me to a store where we bought a bento box and a book, 100 Ways to Make Bento. And this is Brad's lunch on the 3rd day. There is his little lunch box. And it's a little surfboard in there and it's a little Volkswagen. He's still getting a bologna sandwich, but it's a cute bologna sandwich. He's got bangs. He's got cheese, bow tie, carrots, all this sort of stuff. And he was happy and he ate the whole thing. And at first, I just couldn't understand how anybody would take this kind of time to make lunch for a 6-year-old. But I started to get it, and I started to understand how people absorb pieces of their culture and how aesthetics is absorbed. And this bento is how I learned it. So bento, what is the elements of bento? The same thing of Japanese foods, color of cuisine, color, texture, seasonality, presentation, nutrition, portion control. And I showed those few things to a friend of mine. I said, what am I missing? And she said, love. And when parents make these lunch boxes for their kids, she is telling me they put in love. It's not all that rosy a picture, and I'll go into that in a minute, but it's an exercise done not just with foods that are made exactly at that minute, but with leftovers, good leftovers, and people are able to pull this off every day, and they still do. Balance. Where's that first thing I showed you about 5 colors in the balance? And now what do we have here in the US? We replace the pyramid with my plate, colors, and more even portion control. So I found that to be a very interesting comparison there, that we're kind of coming around to thinking that way. In Japan, Obento is a shared responsibility. And I know this sounds sexist, but it's still mostly moms that are pulling this off. Dads are participating more now, but it's the mother's job to create a visually pleasing and nutritious and delicious meal. And it is a child's job to appreciate and eat the entire meal. And I'm telling you, those lunches are empty. When they come back, they have all been eaten. I'm sure you've all experienced children throwing away food here in the US in their school lunches. That is a no-no, a big no-no in Japan. Mottainai, it's very, very wasteful. So that is considered part of your job description as a child and a parent. But there is a dark side to Obento, and that is peer pressure. And I can't really overstate that, because the peer pressure comes from other mothers looking at children's bento boxes. The peer pressure comes from children looking at their friends' bento boxes, and some people who have time to make really cute things and other moms that don't. Kids can get very upset with that. And some moms who have spent some time here and have gotten away with peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and things, they can't do that when they go back. Other mothers would consider them lazy, and they might get scolded by the teacher or the principal. And that is something that happens to this day. But my friend was here and she decided to cut the peanut butter and jelly sandwich out in the shape of a bear. And so she was able to get away with that. But it can be very difficult and can leave some lasting scars for kids who sometimes eat hiding their lunch here if the lunch looks too brown. And recently a friend of mine told me that her friend got a call from the principal to see if everything was okay at home, because the lunch for the child was too brown. There was not enough color. And they wanted to know if there was something going on at home. And whatever it is, it's like whip you into shape, put some effort into making your kids' lunch, and get on with it. But it is still done today. This is not old story from the 70s. So that is a very cute, kawaii Kiara Ben character bento, done by somebody who has a lot of time on their hands, or maybe a teenager. And so this is from the sublime or the ridiculous to reality. Okay, most kids do not get these kind of bento. There are people that do that, maybe not every day, but they enjoy it, and it's like a craft project. But anyway, this bottom here is lunch for a man, made by his wife for him to have lunch at the office. As you can see, there's a fair amount of real estate taken up by the rice. And then you have the side dishes, but homemade, very good, maybe not as gorgeous, but the ridiculous and the reality. There are tons of books to help people along this bento venture through life and giving them different ways to do things. So there's lots of help there. Yes, there is prepared food. You can purchase, these are frozen foods. And for research purposes, I tried each one of them and they're very good. But they pass, look, they're in a cute little cup. They're in different colors, as you can see. And so, you know, people will seek, you know, help with prepared foods. Equipment designed to task. If you've got to make all of this stuff in the morning of one day, you need this. This is a tri-pan, which I'm going to show you today, which cooks 3 foods at one time. And of course, I had to have that because I have to have every piece of equipment I see. But it really helps the job. And I'm convinced that a woman designed this pan if they had to be doing this. But here you see, this is the lunch that they're creating with it. There's the little sausages, the little tamagoyaki, which we're going to make today. The 5 colors, everybody see that? There's rice underneath here. And delightful for a kindergartner. So equipment to task helps you along this road. And love is all you need? Really? No, you need a lot of, you need time. You need creativity. Very often, kids do not come home and say, thank you, Mom, for that delicious, beautiful meal you made me. They may do it later on once they leave the house, but a lot of thought is put into these meals. But I did say it is not all, you know, roses for everybody, and it can become a little tiresome to do this. But at the bottom, there is love. And it is a very green lunch in the sense that there is no waste. You're not seeing a lot of packaging. I have no idea how it happened, but my son has lost every single piece of equipment, wallet, everything in his entire life, but he never lost this bento box. And that always I found very touching to me. It meant something to him. But there's not a lot of paper involved in this, and not a lot of throwaway, you know, packaging for a Japanese box lunch. And just to leave you with a thought that my friend's mother said, that when she's making bento for her child, make sure there's something in there that makes his heart dance. And that doesn't mean it has to be a complicated character. It could be a cute little pick with a little train on it or something like that, but just something that draws the child in. So that is the end of my presentation. Let's make bento, and I'll stop my share here before we get started on anything else. Does anybody have any questions before we start cooking?
Someone had a quick question about what is natto.
Natto. Natto is fermented soybeans. It is an acquired taste, let's put it that way, but it is one of the most healthy things that you can eat. There's little soybeans that are steamed and then inoculated with a koji, like a bacterium. And it is left to ferment for a couple of days at a certain temperature. It is highly nutritious. It's very slimy or mucilaginous. It's eaten with rice, sometimes and a raw egg. It has a really funky, strong smell like maybe like a strong cheese, and I hated it for 25 years. Somehow or other, I started to like it. And I love it now. It's really a very interesting food. You put the natto on top of the rice, you mix the natto and it becomes even more slimy. And you put it on top of the rice with a little mustard or soy sauce. And it's quite delicious and very, very nutritious. And kind of a very good probiotic for your digestion. And again, like a lot of foods and Asian cultures, it's like targeted eating, or foods have a meaning why you're eating it. You know, the pickles are for digestion. Lots of different ways people think about eating food. And I just would like to say one more thing before I get cooking. In elementary, kindergartners usually have bento taken. They take bento to school with them. Here's that little box here. Here's the little wrapping cloth that I have that you put it in. I'll show you how we do that later. Some schools require that the parent makes the lunch. Some mothers avoid going to those schools, but they are required to make their kids lunch. So what's happening here? Socialization of the child and the parent as well. Once they get to elementary school, they have something called kyushoku, which is school lunch. It's usually a hot meal that is made, is real food made. The kids serve the food, they clean up. Everybody eats in the classroom. There is no cafeteria. The teacher eats with the kids. And so for 5 or 6 years during elementary school, there's no bento every day unless it's for a field trip or something like that. And part of this post-war thing to even out the nutrition among children, and also to stop the competition among kids and parents, you know, with these bento. And then middle schools, some schools have cafeterias. High school, no cafeterias, no kyushoku. Parents are back to making bento. And I would say most parents make the bento. The kids do not make the bento. So here again, I understood the difference between the concept of dependence and independence, where we have kids making their lunches at 7 years old, making their peanut butter and jelly sandwich, picking their snacks. You got to make your kids independent. And that is not one of those qualities that is encouraged really there. Kids generally don't do that. So I'm going to start cooking. And if you have questions, I'm happy to answer them as we go along. I'm going to be making a couple of things today. This is the bento box. This will be for the adult, and I'm going to show you how to do a few little cute things for a child as well. Here's the furoshiki. This is the wrapping cloth. And generally, you're not putting your lunch in a case like this. It's going to stay straight like that. So here I have the box. And here, what do you think I have in here? Chopsticks, yes. But you got to see these. These are so cool. It's chopsticks that come apart. And you put them together. And you're bringing them with you to work every day and talk about sustainability and that you have, and also just the clever way people use to create packaging. So there are my chopsticks that come apart. And this becomes not my napkin, but my placemat. So we'll be opening this up. And then this, my beautiful cloth here is two-toned. And this is the box here. And we're going to be filling this box as we go along. Whoops, but I started. Okay, on the side here. As you can see, I have a cherry tomato, but it's in the shape of a heart. Isn't that cute? Don't you want a heart cherry tomato? I'm going to show you how to make that today. All right, and we're going to fill up the rest of this box with our contents. And that is going to be enough lunch for me. I'm telling you, and enough lunch for you. It doesn't look like it, but it is. And I'll show you some bento boxes afterwards. All right, I'm going to switch my screen. Okay. So here's my handy dandy little cooking area. And the first thing that we're going to be making today is a filled rice ball. This is called, oops, on this side, onigiri. This is made with Japanese rice. The Japanese rice is generally a short grain rice, but you can do this with short and medium grain rice. And it is sticky rice, which means that the rice grains stick together and allow you to make different forms and shapes. Oops, just let me make this a little bit bigger so I can see what I'm doing. Okay, there we are. So I have my tuna, and believe it or not, I know this doesn't sound very Japanese, but tuna mayo or tuna mayonnaise is the most popular filling for these rice balls. You usually can fill them with tuna or cod roe or seaweed or cucumbers or avocado or anything like that. They're really, really quite delicious. And the thing about Japanese rice is that it's as good room temperature as it is hot. So you have this, the bento boxes are not hot, not the ones that I'm showing you. And do you remember I showed you in the Japanese, in the New York Times crossword puzzle, the furikake? These are called rice sprinkles, and you may know them. I'm just going to put this down over here. This is a combination in all different flavors, but it's a combination of seaweed, sesame seed, sugar, salt, and it's really very tasty, and people put it on top of plain rice. Now, as we all know, Trader Joe's is the arbiter of all new culture, all new foods from different cultures, and they have something called Japanese rice sprinkles in a container like this. I got everything bagel, sesame seeds. You can put this on onigiri too and make your own bagel onigiri. But Trader Joe's now carries this rice seasoning. The same way Trader Joe's introduced to everybody these little naughty seaweed packets. Generally, these are Korean style naughty. This is from H Mart, but Korean style naughty has like a sesame oil and salt on it. So it's got a lot of flavor. Japanese seaweed nori that's used to mix, make sushi is generally not seasoned, okay? So we'll be doing two types today. All right, but I'm gonna show you first how to do this. And Ivy, are you cooking along with me here?
I'll try to.
Okay, so here I've got my tuna. It's just a regular white albacore tuna in water, like this, okay? And I'm going to add, for an adult, for a kid, I would just add mayonnaise. This is Kewpie mayonnaise. This is Japanese mayonnaise. It tastes a little different. People like it. It's creamier. It's a little sweeter. It does have MSG in it, but it is very yummy nonetheless, and it's only a little bit. And so I use this. You, of course, can use regular mayo. And I put in about 2 tablespoons. Okay. All right, like this. And just cover this up. And we'll just mix up tuna. Now, if I'm making this for an adult, I might add a little sriracha and sesame oil. Really pumps up the flavor, is very delicious. And people love it. Kids, I think American kids are very sophisticated these days. They are eating all kinds of foods. I also put in a little bit of soy sauce, just a little, like a half teaspoon, like that. Okay, just to give it a little bit more umami flavor. All right. And we'll just pull this back a little bit. And this is just the tuna filling. And as I said, you can really put a lot of different kinds of things in it. There's one filling that I make. This is a seaweed, a dark seaweed. I have leftover sheets of roasted seaweed that had gotten a little bit of moisture in them. And so I just cooked them down with soy sauce, mirin, a sweet rice wine, and a little bit of water. And I made a little, like a Japanese condiment called skudani with it, very sweet and salty with my leftover seaweed. And that is something that can be put inside of onigiri as well. All right, now we're going to make the onigiri, which is the rice ball that I showed you before. I've got a lot of stuff here, and I'm just going to get to my rice cooker, which as you can see there, many people have rice cookers in their homes now. And this is going 24/7 in a Japanese home generally, and maybe in, I know, Chinese and Korean homes as well. But this rice, again, is the short grain variety. Let's see if you can, I can take the light down there a little bit so you can see it. So it's very, very warm rice, and you have to have warm rice in order to form these rice balls or those nigiri, the nigiri sushi. And I will show you a mom hack for making this without getting your hands really, really messy. Generally, onigiri is made with your bare hands that you wet and then put salt on your hands and then form the ball like that. But it's very sticky, and to do a good job and to not make a mess, but also to, when we teach kids how to do this in the program that I teach in the Wa-Shokuiku program, teaches children how to make Japanese foods, healthy Japanese foods. This is a great thing. We use plastic wrap. And so we do start with warm rice. We just let it cool down for a minute. Where did I put my salt? Okay. Japanese rice is very, very plain. And I think a lot of people feel that Japanese food is not as flavorful or doesn't have as much of punch. It certainly doesn't have as much punch as Korean food or Chinese food. But some people call it bland, but I'd rather call it subtle. Let's put it that way. Okay, so I'm going to take a cup. I have a teacup here. You can use a little custard cup. I'm going to put in about a half a cup, a little bit less than a half a cup of rice. So Ivy, are you working with me on this? Good. Okay. And as I said, this is something that we teach kids to do. Just trying to get it so that you don't have too much glare here and you're able to see this a little bit better. Okay. And so now I will take the back of my spoon or fork, and I'll make a little indentation in the middle here, like this. Okay. And in goes, now don't think like an American here. You gotta have some restraint. Just about a teaspoon, a little bit more than a teaspoon of tuna in the middle. And then the remainder of the rice on top here. Ivy, have you made onigiri before? Have you made rice balls before?
My daughter has, not me.
Your daughter has. Okay, good. So here we are. One thing I forgot, I always forget this. I could have put a little salt on the bottom of the rice bowl, but I mean on top of the wrap, but I forgot. So there we are. And now what we're going to do is we're going to make a ball out of this without getting our hands dirty. So we're going to bring up two ends of the wrap in the middle. And then the other two ends here. This. And you're going to take it out. You're going to feel that the rice is nice and warm. Okay. And we're just going to twist it like this. And as you can see, the grains are sticking to each other. It's a starchy rice, hence sticky rice. Okay, there are two kinds of sticky rice. This is not the stickiest. And so I've got a ball here. And now I'm just going to lightly press into kind of a snowball shape here. Like this. Okay, you can feel that warm rice in your hand. And now I'm going to form a triangle with this, the traditional shape. So I'm right hand dominated. My left hand is going to hold the rice. And my right hand is going to make like a V or a roof or an L, however you want to describe it. And we're going to carefully turn this like this with see your hand on top like that. A little hard to get it on there. All right. And we're going to start to create a triangle, an equilateral triangle. Okay. Let's see, this way. And then we're going to rotate it once. And the top here. And rotate it again. And rotate it again. And again. And again. So here we have our rice ball, okay? And it's filled. And then after we make one, you can make a couple more if you want. They don't have to be. So we're going to open this up. I don't know what kind of seaweed that you have there, but I'm just going to show you the Japanese seaweed so you can see the ball. When we're teaching kids also, we teach them they can do this as well. And flip it and do that. And everybody has success. Everybody. All right. So now I'm going to take my seaweed. This is half of a sheet of seaweed. This, remember I told you we make the hand roll sushi party. You can see the hand rolls there. And so this is a great size for that. Here. I'll take out a piece. Oops. And I don't throw away the little pieces either, in case I want to make a cute onigiri. And so here, something else you might not know, there are two sides to nori. There's a shiny side and there's a rough side. It's still shiny, but it's kind of rough. The rough side is what goes against the rice. Okay. And I have my handy dandy little scissors for doing all sorts of cute things, but I'm just going to cut it in half today. So I'm just going to cut it in half like this. Oops, not that much, but I did need to cut it off. That. And cut it in half. And this is the sushi. This is the nori that you use to make maki sushi, the rolled sushi, the nori maki. Same sushi, the same nori, same seaweed. And I'm going to now open up my ball. Still no rice on my hands. And take the side that is rough, put it against the rice like this. And there's your onigiri. It's called a rice ball, but this is the traditional shape, the triangle. And you've got your tuna inside. And as I showed you before, to add a little bit more flavor, sometimes I take some furikake. Sometimes you can just mix it in the rice, or you just can dip it in like that. So here is our rice ball. Very often you'll have two of those in a lunchbox, and we're going to add it now to our box. So over here, I have a little bit of salad. And I'm going to put my rice ball over here and stick it up right now. I'm not going to be worried about whether it's going to lay down or not. So I've got a couple of colors going. And so this is the first element of my box. Okay. Any questions about the rice or the rice ball?
Yeah.
Raw fish, sushi is not put into lunch boxes. It is not put into lunch boxes. There's no refrigerator for this. And the important thing here is that once you've put the food in, it has to be completely cooled down so that you don't create an environment where there is bacteria. Okay, so we're going to set this on the side now. I'm going to put these over here. So if you'll bear with me while I try to keep my working space clean. I'm not the most efficient person in the kitchen, but I will do my best to make this look as smooth as possible. The next thing we're going to do is make the tamagoyaki, which is the egg omelet. So Ivy, that'll be our next stop. Let me just get this out of the way here. And I'm just going to show you here how I've set up. Obviously, in order to have these things go smoothly in the morning or whatever it is, you have to have things kind of prepared and ready to go. So it then kind of becomes an assembly project. So I've got some things already put together, so it'll go smoothly as we move along. All right, let me move this off the side. This is what we're making next. This is the Japanese tamagoyaki or rolled omelet. And I'm on my way to California on Thursday. This is my airplane bento. This I'm getting all ready. This will go right in the fridge. But generally speaking, you don't put Japanese rice in the refrigerator because it gets very hard, particularly sushi rice, which by what I mean is that the one that's got the raw fish on top of it, it gets really hard and it's terrible to eat. You can sort of get away with putting this in the refrigerator, but make what you can eat. Let's put it that way. All right, on to the next thing. And just let me get a little bit of water. So what we're going to do now is make the Japanese omelet. So Ivy, in the ingredient list, I put 2 eggs, but 3 gives you a thicker omelet. So if you can use 3, you can use 2, no problem. But I'm just going to use 3 here just to give you that sense of what we're doing. So I've got 3 eggs here. Sometimes these omelets are made with Japanese dashi. Dashi is a fish stock that is the base of all soups and sauces. The fish is called katsuo or bonito. It's a dark flesh fish in the tuna family. And some people don't know exactly why they maybe don't like something. And dashi is at the base of this. Some people don't like fish, or that fish flavor, but it's at the base of all Japanese sauces and soups. So if you're a vegetarian, you need to make sure that it's not put in your sauces or your soups. Tell them you're a vegetarian. Okay, so this is a sweet omelet. It's got, I've got 3 eggs. I've got 2 teaspoons of sugar. People are also very surprised at how much sugar is in Japanese food. There is a lot of sugar in Japanese food. But as my friend explained to me, you're not eating big portions of it. So you're just getting a little flavor. And then we have 2 tablespoons of water. Where did I put my tablespoon? Sorry about that. Just get that out. So in this case, some people would add water, some people would add dashi. So I'm adding the water. Some people add milk, some people add cream, and that makes it even fluffier. Okay, and we have a ½ teaspoon of soy sauce. And I will just show you the way we tell kids to measure is never over the bowl. For sure, you'll make a mistake and you'll get a salty egg. So I always measure off the side. And just a half teaspoon because I'd like to keep the color there. And add it to the mixture. And then a little bit
How
of
many
salt,
tablespoons of sugar do you
a
need?
little pinch like that. Okay.
How many
This is
teaspoons
it. We are all ready to start cooking. Now Ivy, you probably, I'm not sure if you have this special Japanese omelet pan, but I'll just show you, because I have it, I'm going to use it. But you can use a small circular pan to make this. Similar method. So this is a Japanese tamagoyaki pan. It is a rectangle. And what we're doing is creating multiple layers for this. You can do it in a round pan, but because I have this, I thought you might be interested in seeing how it traditionally works. Okay,
Oh,
so
how many teaspoons of sugar do you need?
2 teaspoons, 2 teaspoons of sugar. And the sugar doesn't always only make it sweet, but it also helps it to caramelize and give it a nice little bit of crust. So here would be the moment if I was going to. This is the center of this tri-pan. I told you I had one. I have one of everything. I would use the omelet here. I would make the little hot dogs on one side. And I would put the broccoli on, or the green on another side. And I will show you that afterwards. But for today, I'm going to make the omelet as it's traditionally made. And just give me a second to get my pan within your view. Okay. Helen, how are we doing on time?
It's 8:22.
Oh. Okay. That means move it down. All right, here we go. And if you can see here, I've got my hand here. And so what this is we're going to get this very hot. And I've got my chopsticks over here. And the eggs, and what we're doing is we put this in multiple layers. All right, layer 1, roll, layer 2, roll, and you'll see how I do it. I may move it along a little bit more quickly so that we can get through everything. Here is a piece of paper towel that I'm going to use. I have oil in the pan, and I'm just going to take the paper towel and sop it up like this. Okay. And what you need to do is get this pan very hot. I will do 2 layers and move on to the next thing, but Ivy, you will continue on that. And I'm going to put my here and to see if this is ready. That looks pretty ready. All right. And I'm just going to pour in 1 layer. Okay, for the bottom. And this is a little bit of cheating where, let me see if I get this a little bit closer. I'm kind of scrambling the first layer. This is going to give me a pillow to make this head up on the bottom. All right, I'm going to just lower the heat a little bit. All right, and put this all down at one corner. This egg is ubiquitous in all of the bento boxes, whether it's for a kid or an adult. All right. And every time you put down a layer of egg, you at first put down oil. And here's the fun part.
What kind of oil did you use, Deb?
I used canola oil. All right, here's my second layer. Going in, I pick up a little bit of that egg at the back. Oh, I didn't put in enough. Put a little bit more in. It's kind of hard to fail at this because if you make a mistake, you're doing another layer on top of it. So as soon as you see bubbles, you're just about ready to turn it or rotate it. So if you're seeing here, I'm now taking the egg and I'm folding it over this way. If everybody can see that, once and twice. And I have my first layer. Before I go back, I take the oil, grease the pan again, and push this back. And I do this about 3 times until all of the egg batter is used. And move it around the pan like that. Make sure that it gets underneath. Okay, and here. And when you see a bubble, out. And now I'm going to fold again. My heat's a little high because this is a little dark, but that's okay. And roll it again. And one more time. Okay. Omelet done. And I'm now going to put it down onto my board. Oops, here. And this has to cool before I cut it. I've already made one, so I'll probably use that. And I'll just pull this out here. And now in this pan, I can use the same pan to make the little hot dogs or and the broccoli too, if I want to do that. I will just show you how I cut them and move this over here. All right. Again, to delight the person who is eating, I have made these little hot dogs that are scored if you're an adult, but if you're a kid, I think Ivy has a couple of kids there, you can make a hot dog into the shape of an octopus. Okay, and that's just done by boiling this. And I'm just going to show you how we cut it and then move on to the next item. Let's put these off on the side. And I've got my hot dog here. Okay. This up here. And so to make the octopus, I cut off the top here. And I cut off the bottom here, leaving a head. Okay, Ivy, your kids will love this. And you need to make 8 legs out of this. So you cut almost the top quarter of the head. Now you've got 2 pieces. Flip. Now you've got 4 legs like this. And you have to go from 4 to 8. Very carefully cutting each leg in half, like that. And I will quickly add some water to this pan so that you can see how it flips up when you cook it. And again, why bother? Why does one bother doing this? Mayday tabero, you eat with your eyes, the kids are delighted. You're not doing it every day, but you know, this is part of the part of the kids' lunchbox that they look forward to. And so you've got an octopus with almost 8 legs here. So there's that. And then for an adult, you could fry it just like this, but the sauce that you put on will cling to it better if you make these little scored pieces. You fry it and add a little bit of ketchup for a sauce. And that, again, just makes it look nice. So here we are. The water is boiling. Whoops. And see if we can just show you briefly how the hot dog very quickly unfurls its legs in just about a minute. And you've got a cute little, if you can see that, hot dog. So Ivy, your kids are going to love this one. And you just put that up. And you've got a hot dog. Let me turn this off and put it down here. All right. On to our tray with the fruits. And I think now we'll construct the one with one more little element, which is the pickle. So as you can see now, I've got a cute little hot dog all done. All right, if you got grandchildren, they love this stuff. All right. Egg is almost ready to cut. I have here a few pieces of carrot that I have cut with a little, it's like a cookie cutter for vegetables. I have the regular carrots here, which you can also put in, but I have, again, every shape known to man. So this is kind of like a maple leaf for the season. Some broccoli, some green. For a very quick pickle, I just take a cucumber, just slide all this down a little bit, and a clean knife. A plastic bag that I'm reusing, I washed it. And we'll just cut slices of cucumber. This is called shiozuke, very quick pickle. All right. Put this in the bag. Normally I would have a whole bag full of them here. And I have a little bit of lemon juice that I'll squeeze in like that. A little bit of salt that I'll put in here. This. Take it up. And a tiny bit of soy sauce. I'm not going to pour it in there. I'm going to pour it on my little spoon, so I don't make any vast mistakes. And shake, shake, shake. And we have a pickle, sort of, already. A little bit of soy sauce, a little bit of lemon juice. It's really a lovely flavor. And if you'll just let me move this out of the way so I have a little bit more room for you, we will put the bento together. So here's our box. Usually putting a little green down. This has gotten a little wilted. I started earlier this morning. Not this morning, this afternoon, put that down so that I was ready for you. I'll put a couple of carrots here, like that. This will be for something that's wet, which would be the cucumbers. So I will take the cucumbers out and put them in here, like this.
Deborah, are the carrots blanched or raw?
These are raw. Most Japanese do not do that. They usually blanch them. before they cook them. They don't generally like raw vegetables the way Americans do. And now I'm going to cut my tamagoyaki over here, the one I made a little earlier. Okay. And I make sure that my knife is clean. And you can get 6 to 8 pieces out of this. That. And I'll cut half down the middle. Oh yeah, okay. That came out very well. If you can see the layers. And you can cut it in half again. And then half. And half. All right. I will just show you how it's, again, plated in here. Generally, you're avoiding numbers like 4. It means death in Japanese, and things are generally done not in even numbers, but in odd numbers. So when you have a chance to do that, 2, 4, 5, okay, I'm all right here. And then with your tamagoyaki, you will add it. Oops. So I might want to put something underneath here so that you can do that. Let me put this over here, but put this in afterwards. Usually have about 3 pieces in like that. This box is made out of cedar, and it has antibacterial qualities to it. I also could put my pickles right here in this part over here, and I have a little bit of broccoli, and I'll put over here. Generally, I would keep that away from there. And then I have another protein. And you want to avoid empty spaces. You really want this thing to be packed in. And I might add a few grapes to fill in spaces so that the food doesn't move around. Okay. Pull that heart up. I need effort to do that. All right. Does anybody have any questions at this point? I'm going a little bit quickly.
How did you make the heart?
Okay, that's coming next. All right, a little bit of sesame seeds, iron, and I am going to show you how to make the heart. You need 2 cherry tomatoes. Let me move this off to the side here. So I'm almost done. I can put 2 hearts on there now. And let me move this off to the side. So that amount of food that I made, oops, pick that up, sink. And cherry tomatoes right here with the heart. You need 2 cherry tomatoes. You're going to cut, you're going to look for the oblong, narrow side down there. And you're going to cut about a quarter of an inch off like this on a diagonal on both of them. 1 and 2. I hope I did that well enough. And then you're going to, oops, put it together, and you've got a heart.
Cute.
Heart, and you can add it, or this you can put a green bean here, and you can put a piece of cucumber. You can do something, a piece of cheese, anything. But let's see if we can do 2 hearts without breaking them both. There we go, 2 hearts, and you've got that in here. here is your bento. Okay. And I would generally, pick this up a little bit so you read more, but I'm way over time now anyway. So I'm not going to futz around with it much more. I'm just going to ask you for questions. And what I would do is then cover this here. Let's get this guy down. Cover it. And then put my band on it. And then wrap it with that furoshiki, which I will show you how I'm doing. Put this up here. Let me just move over a little bit.
And while you're doing that, Deborah, someone asked, so you don't wash the box?
Yes, you do wash the box when you're done. You absolutely wash the box when you're done. And you let it dry. You totally wash the box.
And do you have to treat it at all like you do a wooden board or anything like that?
No, just water and soap. You can use soap. Some people don't, but I do. So here I now have the four corners of our furoshiki of our cloth, and you're just folding it over. I didn't put the band on, but the band goes on that. I can't find it right now. And then you pull back this way. Everybody can see this. And then you take this end and you bring it up. And you take this end and you bring it up. And tie it. Okay. Your bento is ready. It does not go in the refrigerator. You're making it that morning. Okay, some elements you can make it the night, but you're generally making it that morning. Thank you. I have a bunch of bento boxes. I won't show you all of them, but just very quickly, man and woman, different size bento boxes, different capacity on the inside, man, woman. Office lady, this goes right in her purse.
Oh my.
Very cool. 3 layers. You can get a lot of food in there. Whoops.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
Where did you buy these bento boxes?
In Japan.
Oh,
But you can get them in the you can get them. There are lots of places to get them online. And I can tell Helen that, but there's one called Thomas Bento, and he has these beautiful traditional boxes. They're out of Kyoto, and they ship them all over the place. So
thank you.
you can definitely get that. And I will just ask you if you can tell me what the difference between, here's a nice bento box. This is one here and one here.
One
Same-
for male, one for male, one for female.
Nope. This is very pretty kimono pattern. I don't
Yeah.
know if I would want to carry this. Guess again.
Parent and child?
Nope.
No?
Japanese American. This is export.
Oh,
This is your export variety. This is for a Japanese woman about my age or college or whatever. And this was not making it here. People could not imagine how they could get food in this box. Plus, we're not a rice, eating culture. We eat a lot of salad and everything. So I met the manufacturer of the company. He manufactured this for twice the volume of that. And it's got 2 layers, top and bottom here. And you put on the top and then you put on the bottom.
oh,
So this is how it works. And put salad in here. You could put a lot of different things in here, but this was not selling for the foreign market, was not buying these small boxes. They could not imagine that one could get a lot of food in there. So they created an export model.
Oh, nice.
Fabulous. Thank
I
you.
was, I was so embarrassed. When he told me this was for an American, but anyway, yeah, we just eat differently. Another one, kid's lunchbox shaped like a hamburger. And then again, here you've got 2 layers. The food goes on 2 or 3 layers. This is where the utensils went, and underneath more food. So you can get a lot of food in here. It's just the way you cut it up and arrange it. And remember, designed to task. This is for rice balls. The way I had showed you, they fit right in here like that. You put 3 of them in, and you put here, and then underneath go the pickles and a variety of things. So I have so many things, lots of cute things. This is in case you want to really make your kids cute little onigiri boxes. It's just endless fun. But the idea really is to create a nutritious meal that looks good. But anyway, thank you everybody for.
Oh, thank you. This was
Thank
great.
Hope
Thank you
enjoyed
so
it.
much,
I learned a
Deborah.
lot. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you,
for
Deborah.
inviting me.
That was
Thank you, Julia.
wonderful.